What's up, YouTube? Matt Modi here with OddsJam on my solo YouTube channel, Jedi Modi Sports Betting. I appreciate everybody who has subscribed, who is currently tuning in to this video. If you're watching and you are not currently subscribed, would definitely appreciate if you could do so as I build my solo channel outside of the main OddsJam one. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my NBA betting strategy, how I have made almost 20,000 specifically betting on the NBA. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. If you're watching, please, again, subscribe if you haven't, but hit that like button as well. Helps me out a ton. And I will say right off the bat, a lot of my strategy betting on the NBA, a lot of it is with using OddsJam and the wide array of tools that OddsJam has to offer. So my first video was talking about how I've used OddsJam to profit over 20K. This video, I'm going to drill it down a little bit more specifically talking about the NBA, because NBA is a little bit different than other sports. I mean, all sports are different from each other. NBA is no different in that it's different. So actually, they're all similar. The first thing to note when you are betting on the NBA or thinking about an NBA betting strategy is injuries on a day-to-day basis probably play a bigger role in the NBA than literally any other sport. When we're talking about a day-to-day role, you could wake up and not know whether Joel Embiid, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, whether these all-star athletes, all-star best players in the entire sport are going to play or not. So monitoring the injury situations becomes incredibly important with the NBA. Now, I don't mean to say that I'm constantly monitoring the injury reports. It's not like something that I'm doing every second to make sure that I am taking advantage of bets. But you can sign up for injury alerts directly on OddsJam. So I just get noted as soon as an alert is made, and then I can kind of make my decisions from there. But that's kind of the first thing to think about, is just understand the injury landscape. Another thing when it comes to the NBA is each season has kind of a different trend when it comes to scoring, right? The COVID year, scoring was up a ton. For whatever reason, no fans being in the stadiums attributed to a lot of points. The following year, and this would have been last year, markets had adjusted and the totals to start the year were much, much higher than normal. They were a little bit inflated. So guess what happened last year? A ton of games went under, right? The under hit at an alarming rate to begin the season. Now, eventually, the sportsbooks catch up and a trend doesn't last the entire season. But if you can catch on a trend early, that can be profitable. This year, it's kind of similar to 2 years ago. These things are almost cyclical. Scoring was up is currently up an incredible amount this year. We've seen some absolutely absurd point totals. Donovan Mitchell put up 70. Joel Embiid was 1 point away from putting up 60. We've seen some insane scoring performances this year. And that's obviously been a trend, is players going over their point total, as well as games in general trending towards more points, higher totals than normal. Now, eventually, where we are now, sportsbooks have kind of caught up to that, so you can't just blindly bet overs. That's almost never a strategy anyways, to blindly bet anything. You want to make sure you're doing research, but that's something to keep in mind depending on when you're watching this. If you're watching it at the beginning of the next season, try to really, really dig into trends at the beginning of the year, because you can take advantage of sportsbooks that haven't quite caught up yet. So those are two things specific to the NBA that's really important, is injuries and then early season trends. But majority of time when it comes to betting on the NBA, I hop on the OddsJam positive expected value page. Now, there are two different things to think about when I'm betting on the NBA. It's almost two different strategies. Number one is betting on non-player props. So I'm actually going to filter out player props for now. When you're on the positive EV page, it's really cool because you can just go to League, NBA, Market. I'm going to filter out player props because player props are handled a little bit differently. So right now I just have main lines. So when it comes to betting on the NBA main lines, the most important thing you can do here is line shop. And I'll get into that in a little bit. First, I do want to describe a little bit about what the OddsJam, like what positive expected value, what this stuff even means. If you have watched my previous video, then I went into greater detail about that, so I won't go as long on this one, but I do think it's still important to understand kind of the basis of everything. So when it comes to sports betting, and I'll use this first play as an example of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about profitable sports betting. So number one, everything is kind of pulled from these no vig odds here. And this part is very, very important. So we see the no vig odds on this one, plus 128. I clicked open this play to show you. We see odds for the same exact play, Raptors -2. That's it. It's just Raptors -2. We see odds range from plus 110 all the way up to plus 132. It's a pretty big range for the same exact play, right? It's kind of a bit 22 cents, $22 if I'm risking $100. It's a pretty big deal. So with that in mind, one of these sports books is going to be more accurate than others. One of them is going to be right. One of them is going to be wrong. Or they're both wrong and the truth is somewhere in the middle. Regardless, they both can't be right. They both can't accurately reflect what this point spread market should be priced at. The Raptors -2, right? It just doesn't make sense. They both can't be that far apart and both be right. So with that thought in mind, there are some sports books that are consistently better than others at pricing odds. That's just kind of the nature of sports betting. Some sports books are better than others at pricing odds. They're considered the sharp sports books. You probably hear that all the time with sharp. What's a sharp book? Sharp play, whatever. It just means who's better, who's smarter. And like I said, there are some sports books that are just better. And there are reasons for that, which I don't need to go into. Mostly has to do with how much money they accept and limits and all that stuff and where they accept money from. All that stuff, it's obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but that's kind of the high level version of it. So with that thought in mind that some sports books are better than others, what OddsJam did and why positive expected value betting is such a valuable tool, and I will say I meant to show this at the beginning. This screen you see here is taken from my bet tracker, the OddsJam bet tracker. Every bet that I've placed since I've been using OddsJam is on this, it pulls into these numbers, these bet tracker numbers. As you can see, total profit just under 24K. And if you highlight that specifically for basketball, it's just under 20K. So the profits are amazing with betting, with using OddsJam, and even higher. The best by far, my ROI is the highest by far, specifically with the NBA, as you can see here. So with that thought in mind about some sports books being better than others, well, what OddsJam did, and again, why it's such a valuable tool, why I've had so much success with it, which is where I was going with that, is OddsJam went back and back tested thousands and thousands of previous betting opportunities, so historical betting opportunities, all to determine what sports books are the sharpest. So instead of being like, oh, I lose a bunch of bets on DraftKings, so they're definitely sharp. Or, my friend, my buddy told me, my cousin's uncle's sister's brother said that FanDuel is the sharpest. No, they used data. They used over an extended period of time to tell us what sports books are the best. And then what they did, they collected all that data. Then they removed the VIG. And the VIG is just the juice that sportsbooks price odds. It's how they make their money. Like we see both sides of this same line, -145, +110. There's a 35-cent gap, right? 45 minus 10 equals 35. Between these two numbers, that's the juice. That's how sportsbooks makes money. They charge a juice. And they remove the VIG, they remove that juice, and using a weighted average, giving heavier weight towards the sharper books. And that's exactly what these no VIG odds represent. They represent odds using a weighted average pulled from the sharpest sports books in the world. So if you kind of think about it from a holistic view, there are, let's pretend 5, and they're not 5, there are more, but let's just pretend there are 5 sports books that are considered sharp. OddsJam pulls odds from those 5, removes the VIG using a weighted average from all 5, and kind of sets that as the true line, with the logic being, all right, if we can get better odds on another sports book, and that just means higher payout, well, that's going to be a profitable betting venture in the long run. And that's exactly what positive expected value betting is. This Raptors -2 should be priced at +128. We can get it at +132. There's a 4-cent gap between the OddsJam perfect line and the book that we are betting. Boom, that is a profitable betting venture. That's what positive expected value betting is. So how does that help us out with the NBA? How do I go from seeing plays on the positive EV page to knowing whether a play is good or not. And here's a bet that I actually locked in. It's another side of it. It's the Suns -1. And I'll show you exactly why OddsJam has helped me become a profitable NBA sports bettor. So I kind of talked to you about how sportsbooks have different odds, right? Not every single sportsbook is going to have the same exact odds for the same exact plays, right? Well, that also means that sportsbooks are going to have different spreads, different totals, different rebound totals, different point totals for player props, different points, rebounds, assists, all that good stuff. They're all going to be different. Not every single sportsbook prices this spread at Phoenix Suns -1. So what we can do is we already know that there's some edge we have on this Suns play at -1, right? Circa Sports is offering it to us at -110. The OddsJam Perfect Line is pricing this at -111. Right off the bat, we know that there is some gap. There is some edge, some value here. But another thing you can do to make sure that you are placing the best of the best, if you view this event page in a new tab, it just takes you to the point spread market. So, all right, we know that there's a good play on the Suns -1, but where does every other sportsbook price this spread at, right? Do they have the Suns at -2, -3, -1.5, whatever? And opening that in a new tab allows you to see this exact information. And as we can see here, majority of sportsbooks have this spread at Suns -1.5 or Suns -2. And then when you're looking at sportsbooks, I mentioned that there are ones that are sharper than others. Well, there are three that I look at as almost the three sharpest, and I use them to set the line. Basically saying, if the bet that I'm placing is an outlier to these three sportsbooks, then that is a sign to me that that is a profitable bet, and that is something I will take advantage of. Play number 1, Pinnacle Sportsbook, generally considered as the sharpest. Well, Pinnacle has their main line of this at about 1.5 or 2. Either way, that's a good sign for us because we're betting on the Suns -1. And not only does Pinnacle price this spread above the number we got it at, meaning we are betting on a favorite, but Pinnacle thinks they should be even a bigger favorite. They have the Suns as the favorite outcome at -111. I know that because the Suns are priced at -111. The Raptors are priced at plus 101. So Pinnacle is charging more juice towards the Sun side of it, which is them telling us that they think it's more likely. Basically saying, hey, we think that the higher percent chance here is that the Suns cover -1.5. So we're going to make that more expensive to buy. The other two sharp sports books are Bookmaker and our BetOnline. Those are the three main ones. Well, BetOnline has this same thing. They favor the Suns at the -1.5 number. So not only is it a half point better than what we're getting it at, they also, two of the three sharp sports books also think that the Suns are more likely to cover even that spread, a half point higher. Now, I can guess your question is going to be, so what? You're beating the closing line by half a point. Why does that really matter that much? And it's a really good question. And the way I like to describe it is the best sports bettors in the world, the people that literally do this professionally, or not a lot, win 55% of the time. Let's think about this from just a math perspective. So you place 1,000 bets. And let's say every single bet you place is at the standard odds of -110. And let's say you win half your bets. So you placed 1,000 bets at -110 odds and you won half. Let's say you're, just for the ease of round numbers, you put $100 on each bet. Well, guess what? You just lost roughly $5,000 from those 1,000 bets. You won half your bets, which doesn't feel that bad. You just lost $5,000. Now let's up that percentage. Instead of winning 50% of your bets, let's say you win 55% of your bets. You're more in line with a professional sports bettor. Well, you would go from losing $5,000 to profiting 4.9K roughly. So it's almost a 10K difference from winning 5% more of your bets. That's how the math works out over the extended period of time of sports betting. So you want to know a really, really simple way you can up your win percentage from 50 to 55%. It doesn't feel that different, right? If you're not tracking your bets, you're placing 20 bets, you win 10, you win 11. It doesn't feel that much different just from a emotional feeling standpoint. It's not like you got smoked, right? It's just a matter of one bet per 20. Well, one way to increase that win percentage from 50 to 55, just line shop. How often do we see Vegas does it again? This team closed at 1.5 point favorites and they won by 1. This team closed as 1.5 point favorites and they won by 2. How often do we see Vegas, people like all this on social media saying, Vegas does it again? They just hit this on the head. Well, if Vegas gets this right and the Suns win by exactly 1, you would have lost every other bet that you placed. You wouldn't have won. You would have lost. At least by line shopping, we would have pushed that outcome. Now, the Suns win by 2, none of that matters. But in the off chance, which is a very high likelihood just based on how the spread is being priced at, that the Suns win by exactly 1, you would have lost every other bet that you would have placed. And then instead of winning 10 or 11 bets, you would just lost another one to get to that 50 to 55% math back to that. So line shopping and getting the best odds is incredibly, incredibly important. And I don't just mean the best odds, I mean the best lines as well. This works for point spreads. This works for totals. You'd be surprised at how big of a gap you can find totals between the sports books if you just look at a main line. And there are a ton of different examples of this. The Spurs plus 3.5 is a really good price, right? They're placed at minus 110 odds. Every other sports book pretty much is in the minus 120s, all the way up to minus 138. Here's a first half total. FanDuel is pricing this at plus 100, so basically even money. Every other sports book has it. Pinnacle has it favored. BetOnline has it at 50-50. So you can get some really, really good prices from using the positive EV page and opening the event page in a new tab, making sure that you are getting the best lines. So that's kind of how main lines work. Obviously, with money line plays, there's no difference. They're not going to, like, money line is just they win or lose. There's no 1, 2, 3 points, whatever. So you just want to line shop across the sports books to make sure you're getting a good price on your individual money line bet. And then what you want to do for player props, like I said, the strategy is a little bit different. You can still obviously use the OddsJam positive EV page, but I do a little bit more digging into player props. I also lower my unit sizing a little bit. So for that Phoenix Suns play, I would have put 1 unit on it. So I would have risked $110 to win 100 on player props. I lower that down to about 0.75 units. But with player props, what becomes really, really important is clicking into the play and comparing the odds of the bet you're placing to every other sportsbook. So you want to make sure that you are only betting on an outlier when you're betting on player props. Again, you want to look at Pinnacle as a very sharp sportsbook. Pinnacle, again, this is a really, really good play. This is an example of a play that I would take. I would put 3/4 of a unit on this one. The play, D'Angelo Russell under 2.5 rebounds. It's bolded. It's got the blue rectangle around it. It's a siren saying to bet me. And let's compare the plus 120 odds to every other sportsbook. Pinnacle, minus 119. They actually have the under favored. BetOnline has the under at minus 119, has it favored. So those are the two sharp sportsbooks. Excuse me. Bookmaker doesn't price player props. So we have 2 other sportsbooks that we use as not on the same level as Pinnacle and BetOnline, but generally regarded as better with player props. That would be DraftKings and that would be FanDuel. I don't know if they use DFS data or what, but they are generally regarded as being sharper with player props than the average book. So DraftKings favors the under. FanDuel favors the under. And don't forget, we're getting this at plus 120. So not only are we getting a really, really high plus money play, all the way at plus 120, but 4 of the best sportsbooks that price player props favor him going over. They think that he will go over, or excuse me, under. He will go, we're playing the under here, excuse me. They think he's more likely to go under. So they think that the under has over 50% chance of hitting. It's more than 50% likely to hit. And we're getting it at plus 120. And I do this for every single player prop. So I don't lock in a single player prop without clicking into the play and making sure that I'm betting on an outlier. And then for plays like this, points, rebounds, assists, you might be able to open the event page in a new tab and see where every sportsbook has this market at. For this Markelle Fultz one, FanDuel has it at plus 1, or excuse me, has it at 20.5. Well, not every sportsbook might not have it at 20.5. Now, in this case, they do, but look at Paolo Banchero. Majority have it at 27.5. Some have it at 28.5. Look at James Harden. We see 36.5, 37, 37.5. So this is when it is similar to a spread in a total, where you can just compare the markets themselves and see, okay, do sportsbooks agree that this is what the main line should be? If not, what do they have it at? Is it in our favor? So that is the general consensus on my NBA betting strategy. For player props, just make sure you're betting on an outlier. For spreads and totals, see where the other sports books include, especially the three sharp ones, price the spread or total to be. If it's in your favor, put a unit on that bad boy. Get enough volume to make sure that you reduce the variance aspect of it. Sports betting, even if you have an edge on every single play, and unfortunately, reality is you could still have some down days. You could have a really good bet that loses. There's no such thing as a lock. I have had some down days. I've had some really high up days as well. More up than down, which is why my profit is where it is, but you do have to accept some variance with sports betting. But hopefully this video made sense. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter at JediModi on the screen here. Hit me up. You can email me, matthew@oddsjam.com. You can comment on the video. But that is going to be it. So I appreciate everybody watching, and have a good one.